Well, the big storyline has been Lamar Jackson has been absent from football school, and we talk about why that's not such a big deal compared to what it's being made of by some. All that and much more coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, and we're here as always on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available all podcasting platforms, including on YouTube. You can subscribe for free, no money involved, both audio and video. And we're rounding out the week on Purple Friday with a red guest, as you can see on the video. It's Qadry Ismail, former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver and Super Bowl champion. New backgrounds, and of course, just emitting that red light over there. And it's first time with this background, Q. And I think this is the first time the Ravens are doing the football school. I don't recall, at least I don't remember something like this. This is before the voluntary OTAs. So it's these 2 sessions, offensive install, defensive install, and stuff like that. But it's a good way for guys to get to the facility, get that camaraderie going early. But there have been a couple of names that haven't been there. Namely, I know the big one is Lamar Jackson.
Okay, so first of all, I'm at my training facility, and it's called photobiomodulation. And basically, it's red light therapy. I really believe in light. It really makes a big difference on the way your body reacts to your environment and how you're able to recover. So there's that. When it comes to recovery and getting yourself ready for the offseason into the end season, the collective bargaining agreement was put into place to help out people who are trying to make the team, but also veterans who already are in a good position to make a team and really don't want to get beat down before the season starts by overzealous coaches. And so they, went from having mini camps to just calling them OTAs, organized team activities. Well, now it's even morphed into furthering of what they call just football school, where you have your off-season programming, but you can also be interacting with the coaches. And I think that's really important, because I could be in the best shape of my life, but if I don't know your scheme, how am I going to be able to just go out there and play? I don't want to, be thinking about it. I want to be out there and, hey, you want me to go to that gap, or you want me to press the edge, or you want me to disguise this coverage, or, hey, look, on this particular audible, you're saying when that guy comes up to the line, I'm going to break off my route this way. And all those little details, it gets you a chance to just work on your game, improve upon it. And I think that's where, you have your collective bargained off-season training. Now, when it comes to the stars and the studs of your team, this has been going on for millennia. When it comes to guys like Lamar Jackson, if I'm a coach, I really don't want to see him. You'll say, well, what do you mean, Qadry? How come you don't want to see him? I mean, isn't this an opportunity to coach him? It's not that it's not an opportunity to coach him. Sure, you want to go ahead and have a potential to implement some things and he could see or tweak or whatever. But I want him fresh for when it all matters. My job, I'm going to get fired if we have a season that is not a productive season. So Lamar Jackson's success depends upon my welfare as far as my family and providing for them. Why would I want to beat him down in meaningless offseason work? Now, it might not be meaningless in the sense of, organized team activities that are mandatory, but those voluntary ones, I don't want to see you. And I think it's good that, guys get away, and then all of a sudden they go ahead and take it to the next level. What is that next level? That next level is them doing their thing at some facility, and then they get together when it is in an organized fashion at the Ravens facility.
And kind of going off what you said, I think for a lot of people, like, look, personally, my preference, Lamar, it would be nice if he was there, especially with the implementation of a new offense. But then, it's the extreme other side of it where people are saying, well, he's not a leader for not showing up. He's not going to be prepared by not showing up. He's doing the team and the fans a disservice by not showing up. Look, I understand if there's a little frustration because, you want him there. But at this, look, it's voluntary, first of all. It's not required. He's not holding out or anything. And another thing is he's still working with his team by himself. It's not like he's sitting around just lounging. He hasn't done anything since, the injury. He's been working. We have seen a couple of videos surface. I believe he was with Nelson Aguilar working down in Florida. So it's not like he's not even working with his teammates. He has people there who he's working with. And on top of that, Q, the point I've been making is we went through this whole thing last offseason. We had this exact conversation actually last offseason where it was, should he be there? And it's different now in a better way because Lamar has the contract signed. Look, if we get the training camp and he's not there, then the concerns can be real. But there's no reason for him to not be at training camp because he has his contract and he's ready to go. That is not, we're not even in the voluntary OTA section yet. And he missed the stuff last offseason. In the first 3 weeks of the season last year, Q, what happened? He played like the MVP of the league before, obviously, he had some struggles towards the end. But there was all the talk about, well, he's not going to be prepared for the start of the year. He's not going to pick up the stuff. I know it's a bit different this offseason because you're trying to get up to speed with Todd Monken's system. Him being there with Todd Monken, sure, it'd be a benefit, and I prefer to see him there. But I'm not going to say that Lamar's this terrible leader or doesn't care about football or care about the team because he's not there. He's just doing his own thing, and to me, that is completely okay.
Every point you made is spot on. When you look at the way teams are put together, you do know that, yes, when we get paid a certain amount, that puts on, the pressure or mantle of leadership, of expectations, of demand, of winning, of all those things. But there's also a thing called, this is a violent sport. This is a violent sport that, yes, it is so violent, it also mentally affects you as well. If you can get away and when you come back, you are fresh, ready to go, that's more valuable to you, the player, you, the teammate, you, the coach, you, the coaching staff, you, the position, all of it, all the way up into the organization, all the way to the fan base. So I think the fan base needs to just chill out and, continue to just do what they do as far as it's all about nothing, really. I think it's one of those cases where for Lamar Jackson, he feels very confident and comfortable with his offseason routine. We've seen where he went from 2000, what was his first year, 2018? Remember we were talking about how he was throwing passes and they weren't as spiral? My God, man, he worked on his game. You didn't even see him. And all of a sudden he comes back. He's the freaking league MVP. So I think, he's more than proven himself capable of, adjusting to whatever weaknesses he might have and making it his strength. So I'm not even the fact that you had Nelson Aguilar, they posted it up. He was down in Coral Gables with him. Bruh, where are we going for lunch? Your treat.
He got that contract, so he's
what I'm saying? Let's do it. Don't even worry about being up here. You're gonna have long days. I want you to be ready for opening day, and I want you to be ready to go and travel abroad and play against the Titans and things along those lines.
Yeah, and look, I know you're obviously not saying they're going out there during football school and playing full contact 60-minute games. Well, Steve Saunders might have been doing that. I don't know what his deal.
Hey man, F- don't mess around. You gotta be careful about that.
Yeah. Woo. So hopefully the strength staff's a little better this time around, and they feel a little bit more comfortable with it. But I think for Lamar, kind of I thought about it a little bit too. I don't know what to call it, a weird benefit almost of Lamar not being there, if you want to call it that. I don't know if benefit's the right word, but you get Tyler Huntley and Anthony Brown these snaps with the first team guys who were there. And obviously, look, Lamar's not there. A lot of other veterans aren't there too. So it's not the full team that's there, but you're getting guys like Tyler Huntley and Anthony Brown, those snaps. And again, those are valuable. Tyler Huntley got a lot of practice reps when Lamar was out, and obviously got the game reps as well. Anthony Brown got some game reps too. The hope is Lamar doesn't get injured. You never know in the sport. Anyone can get injured at any specific time. But, getting those guys snaps in with some of the guys that are there. Zay Flowers participated this time around. I don't think rookies were available for the first one, but the second time around, the rookies were there. And I think, again, this is something for the younger guys, I feel like, where if veterans show up, that's awesome. You get the veteran leadership. You're able to, and that's great. I give a lot of credit to Marlon Humphrey. I give a lot of credit to Roquan Smith and those guys for showing up. But to me, I think this football school is an opportunity for some of these young guys to get in with the coaches, figure things out. And if veterans are there, that's awesome. But again, if they're not there, I just don't think it's the end of the world.
I think the fact that I am trying to make the 53-man roster and Roquan Smith or Marlon Humphrey has it locked down, then I really don't want them taking reps. I want all eyes on me. I want you to be wowed and say, okay, cool, we could use him on kickoff or kickoff return or punt return. I want you to see that I can be depended upon because I know I follow instructions and I can adapt my game and adjust to things. That's the beauty of what we see when it comes to, working with the coaches up close and personal in these type of OTAs. But, if you're going to be one of those guys where you want your entire team there, I mean, you're going to burn them out. The guys who are there need to be there. The guys who aren't, I don't want Ronnie Stanley coming through that door. I don't want to see Morgan Moses. I don't want to see all those guys. Is it important to develop chemistry? Sure, but we got a long time to develop all the chemistry in the world.
Yeah, and again, the point that I want to continue to make is, again, this is a new thing. At least I think, again, I can't recall the time this has happened for them. This is before voluntary OTAs. This is literally before that. And I know, Q, if Lamar doesn't show up for that, we're going to have the same conversation again because it's going to be the same type of discourse. So again, look, it'd be cool if those guys, even just in the building and not practicing, right? Getting to know some of the new coaches and new players. But at the end of the day, these guys don't need to be there. And I'm not saying that, if all these veterans aren't there, if Lamar's not there, the Ravens, they can still win a Super Bowl if Lamar doesn't show up to these things. They can still win a Super Bowl if he does too. Either way, sure, it'd be awesome if Lamar was there, but at the end of the day, he's not. And I'm just not going to get too worked up about that right now because, again, it is voluntary. Lamar and the veterans are look, we saw Odell and Rashad Bateman working out together in the offseason. These guys are still working hard. So I'm excited when everybody actually gets there, but for now, I'm not making a huge deal about it. But coming up in the second segment, we'll be talking a bit about David Ojabo, Odafe Oweh, Mike McDonald, and what actually happened at football school on Wednesday. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to dive into on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built. And if you're looking for a delicious snack with all of the sugar and calories, you need the best tasting protein bar ever in Built. And if you're like me, you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, I've got just the thing for you with Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and they taste amazing. What makes them so good is, for starters, they're covered in 100% real dark chocolate, and they only have 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you need to wait to get a box. You've been talking about ordering Built Bars at Built.com, and now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, and you can still get your specialty flavors at Built.com. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk to the pharmacy section to grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream bar, double chocolate bar, or coconut puff. And if you're close to a Sam's Club, we're going to grab a 13-bar box of their flavors, such as brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank me later. We're back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens here, Purple Friday edition. Kevin Ostraker still here with Qadry Ismail and Q. With all the talk about who's not there at football school, let's talk about who actually was there. David Ojabo, Odafe Oweh talked to the media. There was a funny moment with David Ojabo when he said he tried to get 55 from Terrell Suggs, and Terrell Suggs said, "Oh no, you don't." He said, "Oh no, you do not." Look, there are a few players that can say no to that. Terrell Suggs is one of them.
I think Terrell, it's so funny because there are certain numbers that you've seen on the team. I don't know if we'll ever see a 20 or a 52 again. Definitely not a 75. I think those three are numbers that are lock. But you saw number 5. You saw, guys who, want to go down that path of single digits, change out and, put into those single digits that, saw number 3. Matt Stover is in the Ring of Honor, And I know at the same time, James Prochet is crying over a little spilt milk because right now he ain't got number 3 anymore. But I think the point I'm making is that yeah, I like the fact that the Ravens it's a young organization, but in its youth, in its powerfulness of its youth, it's had some tremendous um, players that have come through there and have developed a name number recognition. And the double nickel is so synonymous with Terrell Suggs. So it'll be interesting to see, what it is because when you look at it, um, yeah, that 5 right there to me is like a big one. That's a Super Bowl MVP and the whole 9 yards, but it was claimed, if you will. So I think if there's a moratorium, if there's you know, I'm gonna give our guy who went to war for us, who won us a championship, an opportunity to have the last say. And if he says no, then we're gonna wait a couple more years again. So that's how you do. And I think it's hilarious. I think it's classic Terrell Suggs.
Yeah, and do you remember that 5 discourse that people had? It got toxic because there were so many people on the one side where it was they shouldn't give it out, and then there are so many people on the other side where it's like, well, it's just a number. He only won the Super Bowl. It was pretty toxic for a while with that number 5.
It was, and I think numbers they carry a ton of weight. It looked weird, for example, when the meteoric rise of Ray Rice, and you would go to M&T, and I'm telling you that 27 jersey, it rivaled easily 52, easily 5. Like, I mean, I'd be doing a broadcast and I'm like, wow, you see 27 everywhere. And then, once it went down with what happened, you didn't see a single 27, and then it was like, well, yeah, you kind of pause and it's like an afterthought. It began with a defensive back. I forget the kid's name, but then it, eventually, obviously, J.K. Dobbins. But yeah, man, like numbers are such powerful connectors between us and our special players. I know for me, it was 34. Like, you couldn't tell me nothing. I was Earl Campbell when I was growing up, and that 34 was like, I was like, yo, this is it. I'm gonna be the next, fullback running over people, whole 9 yards. But at the same time, yeah, when it comes down to it, it holds special meaning to players, it holds special meaning to the fan base and all of it. You get your mojo from it.
What was that? Was that defensive back Cyrus Jones, 27?
Cyrus Jones. Wow, look at you.
Local guy, went to Gilman, I believe it was. So
Oh,
I think people
man.
had his jersey, and he had that crazy, was a punt return against the Raiders or something, all the way back. He was on that 2018 team, I think. But I think
Right.
defensive back 27. The only one I can think of is Cyrus Jones. So maybe there was another one I can't think of. But
no, I'm pretty sure that was him. Yeah.
yeah, so it's crazy. You look at a number and you kind of think, you can kind of list off some of the players. And I think for me, 55 is one where I'm not sure if we're going to see that one again. 73 with Marshall Yanda's another one that I don't know if we're going to see that one. And I don't know, maybe 8/1. We all know what happens with number 1. If Lamar wins a Super Bowl, he said he's switching. Now, who knows if he actually doesn't? And we said that a couple of years ago. Maybe he stays true to it. I think it'd be cool to see him in the 1 because then everybody knows what happened. Like, everybody knows the storyline. And I tweeted it out maybe it was a couple weeks ago. And like, I think half the fan base knew what I was saying and the other half didn't. They're like, what do you mean? Why would he switch out of 8? And I'll be like, you'll see why he switches out if they win. So,
For real. Come on. You guys got to keep up now. Goodness.
yeah, crazy. But numbers aside, Q, with David Ojabo and Odafe, I talked about it on yesterday's show. Those are 2 guys that I think have to step up in such a big way for them. I mean, the pass rush room, Justin Houston and no one, no veteran has come in. So it's going to be Oweh. It's going to be Ojabo. Can't forget about Tyus Bowser in that conversation. But then after those 3, I mean, Tavius Robinson is, I think, your 4 right now. So Oweh, I think the expectations for him last year were super high. Did not live up to those. I think it was a disappointment for most. I know he was frustrated with his year 2 going from 5 sacks in his rookie year to 3 last year. David Ojabo only had 1 tackle and it was a strip sack on Joe Burrow. So what a way to start your career. But those are 2 guys with Ojabo, you can say it's probably his first year in the NFL, only playing in 2 games last year. But Oweh entering year 3, those are 2 guys that you can't pin it all on 2 players, but they could, depending on how the pass rush looks, make or break some of that Ravens season.
Well, let's start with David Ojabo. First of all, he did a remarkable job of putting himself in position to get the strip sack because he rehabbed his butt off to get out there. I think when it comes to his talent, it just showed his relentlessness and his ability to get to, obviously, a guy who is elusive in the pocket, can break tackles, and then throw the ball down the football field. I think that was really a game-changing moment too. So, big plays all around, the way in which, he kind of put himself in and incorporated who he was or is as a rush guy. Odafe Oweh, it's not that I am saying anything negative. I think for Odafe, it's one of those cases where you're a first rounder, you have tremendous talent, but we haven't seen you live fully up to said talent. You talked about the 5 going down to 3. And I mean, if we use horseshoes and hand grenades, my God, he's fast tracking himself to the Hall of Fame. It was amazing how quickly he would get around an edge, but then it was like he went to neutral and he couldn't finish. I think if there was every time, you have an off season, you look at, your season and you say certain, I don't know, like motivational phrases for yourself. I think finish needs to be the motivational word for Odafe Oweh. He has got to finish, and they're going to need him. And I know Tyus Bowser. He spent some time on IR, but he came back and he looked strong as well. So you're right. I think Chuck Smith, the coach, his ability to teach them and help them with some of the tricks of the trade. I mean, that was his thing. His whole flow was, being a rush guy. So I think, yeah, overall, like bigger picture wise, it might be one of those situations where once you see like both of them kind of tag teaming off of one another, it could come in bunches. And that's what I'm hoping for. It comes in bunches. And he really, meaning Odafe Oweh, really leads the pack and leads the way for everybody.
Yeah, and going off what you said about Oweh, he ended up when he spoke to the media, he said that last year sometimes he wouldn't really have as much of a plan, where he would kind of get somewhere and then kind of freeze up and not really know what to do. Where I think this year he said he was more focused on kind of knowing what his steps are and progressing through that plan throughout the course of a snap and throughout the course of a play. So for him, I think he understands what he needs to do. And almost, both those guys, I don't want us to get lost in everything that both Oweh and Ojabo started football late. I mean, these were guys who weren't playing, when they were super, super little. They started the game late, and so they are still learning. That's a thing. But at the same time, at the NFL level, there's not a lot of sympathy for that if you're not producing. You got to produce out there, and we've said it, Q, time and time again. This isn't what have you done for me now lately league. So if they're not doing it, then they're not doing it for you lately, and that could be an issue.
It certainly can. I mean, the stage is set. You got Burrow, Pickett, a Deshaun offseason, fully Watson. Like, you're going to have to make some noise in your own division if you're going to hit yourself to that ride that is Lamar Jackson and getting into the postseason.
Yeah, and look, I think we can all agree that Lamar is the X factor. Lamar is the guy that makes the wheels turn. This team lives and dies by Lamar, but Lamar can't do it all by himself, both offensively and, of course, the defense. and that's a big part of it too. So guys around him also have to produce. But if you want to say, oh, one player, who's the one player for every team is a star, and for Baltimore, that star is Lamar Jackson. But coming up on our final segment, we talked a bit about the Ravens' schedule and getting Q's player perspective on a couple of nuances in that. So be sure to stay tuned. Still at 10:11 to Locked On Ravens. Don't go anywhere. We're back rounding out Locked On Ravens here on Friday. Kevin Ostraker rounding out the week with Qadry Ismail on this Purple Friday. And Q, the Ravens schedule, we didn't get a chance to talk about it. We recorded for Thursday, and the schedule came out on Thursday. So I want to get your initial perspective on it, because I think for Baltimore, we talked about, well, where are the primetime games going to fall? Are they going to get 3? Are they going to get 5? At 6 is the max. They got 4, and they're all kind of later in the year. They also have that stretch at the beginning of the season. 3 AFC North road games in the first 5 weeks. They're done with that after week 5. How'd you like how the schedule fell for them?
I really love the fact that you start off your season so AFC dominant and AFC North on the road. Because one, if you're saying you're a good team, good teams, especially early on, they get seasoned. They travel on the road, and they travel well on the road. They get victories. They win them by, large margins. They win them in the fourth quarter on 2-minute drives. They win in a variety of ways. They win those tough fought games, those scoring matches. They do all those different things, and they come out with victories. I'm not saying that this is a team that needs to go 4-0 to start off their first quarter of the season. But what I am saying is that they need to get off to a strong start, period. So we're looking at a situation where, as that end of the year comes, it will match up more favorably towards you. Obviously, you got to go to London. Obviously, you got your December bye, which I think is going to be really critical. And then ultimately, when it comes to Christmas, all right, tell Santa he's going to have to chill out, talk to the kids, whatever, and Dad's going to be on TV, but that's so be it. And then what I love is that you got Pittsburgh at home, and you're going to season yourself up with a great matchup at home against the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, that's all going to be key. And you mentioned that bye. Some people are not very thrilled about that whatsoever. I know for me, I think my preference, and again, I didn't play, so you're going to provide that player perspective for me, but that week 9, 10, 11, I think early in the year, that's kind of like the disaster case for me, where it's like then you have to go the rest of the year and you don't get a break. But what I took solace in the fact with the week 13, kind of the end of the year bye, is the fact that at that point, everybody needs rest at that point. Everybody's banged up. Everybody's injured. So if you didn't get the week 9, 10 bye, I think getting a later bye is much better than getting the earlier bye. But you tell me, Q, you player perspective, what did you kind of like when you saw your schedules and where you wanted that bye to be positioned?
Oddly enough, we would have a half a season bye. It would come right at the right time without fail, whether or not we were a very successful team or whether or not we were a team that struggled and then got on a roll after a bye. Typically, the teams that I played on, we played well after a bye. It's just one of those things where for this team, I just get a sense and a feeling that having an early opportunity to go on a run, then kind of take a deep breath, breathe for that little final stretch, it really matters. And you don't really have another team that you have to go up against that's coming off of their bye. Remember, we had that weird schedule the one year, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. It just was like, what the heck are you guys doing with us? But I think this sets up really well.
Yeah, there weren't any weird quirks. Like that Cleveland thing was unreal. Like the fact that the schedule makers had that happen and people were coming off their byes. The Ravens, you talked about it, don't play a team that comes off of their bye. I believe that's the stat this year. So that's going to be really key for them. But the 4 primetime games, I'm excited for those. You start off week 11 is the first one. That's at home, Cincinnati. And then you get the Chargers, Jacksonville, and San Francisco. I mean, all 4 of those games are going to be incredible primetime games. I wish there was one more at M&T Bank Stadium. It's 1 at home and 3 on the road. But I think when you're talking, we had that conversation last week about, well, where does the NFL view the Ravens? Because Lamar got injured the past 2 seasons. That kind of impacted their end of the year stuff. Obviously, you can't bank on injuries. Injuries happen, but who's it going to be? It's not just like one player is going to do that. But I still think that this was a fine number for Baltimore. I think that 4 was a fine number, and the fact that the matchups are so good, I think makes it a little better too.
Yeah, I honestly look at the top teams. Just because you were a top team last year, there is no guarantee whatsoever in this league. You got to earn everything. Everything has to be earned. And I think the Ravens are fully aware of the last 2 years, partly due to F minus. But now that F minus is no longer in the building, it gives you a stronger chance to be, I think, prepared. Yeah, I think this is one of those cases where the schedule works itself out right. And it doesn't matter that you're going on the road. I think it's great that you get seasoned and have to take on San Francisco in an uncomfortable environment. I think it's going to help for the final 2 home games of the year when you got to really, really see what seeding you're going to have based off those victories into the final portion to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and we knew they were going to be traveling. I mean, the West Coast trips to San Francisco and Arizona, the London trip as well. But to end the year at home like they are against both Miami and Pittsburgh, as you talked about a tiny bit there, Q, I think that's so big for them just to kind of relax a little bit. No, they're not going to have to travel for those final 2 games. And if it's a stretch, we talk about this, and it was our first couple of shows we did together. You mentioned that AFC start, where we talk about, AFC record, and we've kind of mentioned it here and there, being like, well, obviously the NFC, you want to win every game, but the NFC games from a seeding perspective, maybe division races, wild card races don't matter as much. That first 6 weeks when it's, Texans and those AFC North games and Indianapolis and Tennessee, and how you end the year with Miami and Pittsburgh, those 2 AFC games to end the season, if they're fighting for the division, if they're fighting for a wild card spot, fighting for seeding, those 2 could, we talk about make or break. That could make or break either where the Ravens are positioned or their playoffs altogether.
Yeah, make or break is right. I just think for what we're seeing with this team, let them get into December healthy. I honestly think there are enough guys on that team, playoff-wise, like if they have an idea of where they're going to go and they're really like, if the Owehs are doing their job and if the motivation of the Robinsons and the Ojabos and all of that, like, my goodness, if we're not looking at some catastrophic, knee injury from a defensive back, knock on wood, bruh, we're gonna be all right. I really do believe this is a good. I don't know. It's just good. It's good. It's a solid opportunity, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it unfolds as the year goes on.
Yeah, and we're still early enough in the offseason where we're obviously not early in it, but early enough where this team can still be built. There are still other avenues for them to improve, maybe at a corner, maybe at an outside linebacker, an offensive lineman. So they have depth at a lot of positions already. If they can just round that out, even if they go through injuries, which every team does, they will. I still think that they can have guys step up in those absences. Lamar's a different, like if Lamar gets injured again, obviously, again, he's the heartbeat of this team. A lot kind of goes out the window if Lamar's not playing for you. But they have depth all over the place, and hopefully they'll be able to use that to their advantage and hopefully round out the rest of the roster as the weeks and months continue before the year. But Q, I appreciate you for hopping on. Thank you so much for joining me. And next week, we're kind of in the lull period of the offseason where things are starting to slow down a little bit. But OTAs, they'll be here before we know it. And that'll continue the trend. Training camp, preseason, and then regular season will be here too.
Training camp is really what makes it all happen. I think that's where you kind of bond as a team. And so right now, this is the preparation phase. Like you said, this begins the dry season, but this begins the build-up, the calm before the storm, before everything starts to get real.
Yeah, and I guess there's really no calm when we're talking about Lamar Jackson being there or not being there. There's always something to talk about because people make up storylines and figure stuff out. But we will see what the Lamar Jackson attendance watch is. That's what I'm calling it. The Lamar Jackson attendance watch will be. But again, until we get to training camp, I'm not putting emphasis on it. But that's all I have for you here today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Locked On Ravens. We'll get back here on Monday. More Ravens content from us. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And I'll see you right back here on Monday.